General Nagata is joining us. And General, in full disclosure, we booked you for something else, and you have unique expertise in what happened over the last 24 hours, given your previous command. So I'd like to know your initial reaction when you heard the news of this Iranian drone attack, and you know, how frequent is this threat to the coalition forces there?
Well, thank you for inviting me to be here. This is something that I was once heavily involved in while I was still on active duty. I'm a little out of date. I retired 3 years ago, but I spent a great deal of my career in this part of the world. To answer your question more directly, as far as I am concerned, this kind of threat, whether it manifests itself in an actual attack as it did 24 hours ago, or it's just a constant feature of the environment, makes it precisely that. It is a constant feature of the environment. For any of the Americans and our allies that are operating in this part of the world, whether on the Iraqi side of the border or on the Syrian side of the border, in an effort to continue to keep the ISIS threat at bay, we are inevitably a potential target for actors like Iran. And so when I read about this attack that just recently occurred, I was not surprised at all. It will happen again.
And, you know, General, to remind people, when it comes to ISIS, Iran is just as concerned about ISIS as the United States is. And so what do you make of the intensifying sort of, I don't know what else to call it, but it certainly seems like they're almost trying to pick a fight with U.S. troops?
That is true, although I wouldn't exactly call it pick a fight. What they're trying to do is they're trying to shape our behavior in ways that are less threatening to Iran and thereby more advantageous to Iran. The last thing the Iranians want is a major conflict with us, but they don't like our presence in this part of the world. They don't like the relationships we have with many of the nation states and the populations in this part of the world. And they're antagonistic against us for a whole host of other reasons as well. So when they see an opportunity to harm the United States in this part of the world and they think they can get away with it, they will certainly try.
General, you're somebody, when a mission is outlined, you're asked to lead it, you know what it is. I'm curious, and I know you don't want to wade into politics per se, but do you think this administration needs to clarify what the mission is in Syria these days for U.S. troops?
I'm going to broaden your question a little bit. I think we have a whole of government challenge here, where I think we both confuse ourselves, we confuse our allies, and to a degree, we even confuse our adversaries about what is it the United States believes it must do in this part of the world. I mean, there's some obvious things. I mean, traditionally, for decades, it's been protecting the free flow of oil from this part of the world because so much of the world's economy still depends on that. We also have very important relationships in this part of the world. On the Arab side, on the Israeli side, many populations, many governments in this world, to one degree or another, depend on the United States. But those are the realities, or what I consider to be the realities, that are too often in conflict with our rhetoric. And in too many cases and in too many places across both Democrat and Republican administrations, we've given the impression that we want to walk away from the United States, or I'm sorry, we want to walk away from the Middle East, or we want to wash our hands of the complexities there because we have other things to do. And no doubt the Russia-China challenges we face are very important. But every time we try to walk away from this part of the world or just create the impression we intend to, we create problems for ourselves.
I can't help but sort of scratch my head on this next development, which is we have Saudi Arabia making peace of sorts, reopening diplomatic relations with Iran, and brokered by China. Now you have Russia trying to broker opening diplomatic relations between Syria and Saudi Arabia. And General, the country that has been begging us to do, arguably, that sort of pushed us to go to Iraq, begged us to go to Syria, is Saudi Arabia. So, it does sort of, I'm confused by our alliances right now. Are you?
I'm not sure I'd say I'm confused about it. I am very concerned about it. I think that all the actors involved in this drama, not just the United States, are allied partners like Saudi Arabia, like the United Arab Emirates, like Israel, and our adversaries or competitors, such as Iran, such as the substantial Russian presence here. It makes for a very complex environment, rather obviously. But what it has led to, probably not intentionally, but it has led to actions and statements by the United States over a long period of time, crossing several administrations, that have become very difficult for people in the region to interpret accurately. And when people are in doubt, when people are confused, they're going to revert back to what they're afraid of. And I think some of the activities we're seeing in the region is because many actors in the region can't figure out what the United States is trying to do. So they revert to their own mental worst case scenarios, and that's what they base their actions on.
And so basically all the countries you just name-checked there, I would argue, to borrow a political phrase, have decided to triangulate their own alliances, right? They've got Israel has its own relations with China and Russia that are not necessarily in line with ours. Ditto Saudi Arabia, ditto Egypt, ditto Jordan, I mean, and go down the line. And it sounds like what you're saying is because of this confusion on rhetoric, these countries have decided they had no choice?
Yeah, at the risk of oversimplifying this, I think it's just a fact of human nature that when people are confused by their surroundings and the activities happening around them, they hedge their bets.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're seeing now at the strategic level. We're seeing a lot of hedging of bets by many actors in the region. Now, in some cases, that isn't all that important to American interests, but in some cases it is. And certainly when it comes to a country like Saudi Arabia or a country like Israel, when they start hedging their bets based on their uncertainty about what the United States is trying to do or is willing to do, that is never good for us.
Retired Lieutenant General Michael Nagata, like I said, we booked you. We wanted to talk about the concern about election interference, Russian hackers. They may be back in 2024, but this seemed to be an issue that we're dealing with right now in 2023. So, General, I appreciate you being flexible. Thank you, sir.
You're very welcome.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.